afternoon, Singapore. It's a great feeling to speak here in such a warm place comparing to Netherlands. Before I'm going to get to my talk, let me tell you a short story. In 2017, an artist from Oregon, he published a series of videos where he was drawing different comic characters in 10 minutes, 1 minute, and 10 seconds. Those videos became super viral. Like the video with drawing, where he was drawing Spider-Man, got over 10 million views on YouTube only. It was so popular not only because the guy is drawing great pictures, but that's a great example on how results can be different depending on the amount of work you invest into your project, your work. And today, I'd like to share with you what the results you can expect from integrating different social features, depending on the time you spend integrating them. And I'd like to talk about the area that I find one of the most undervalued areas in the game mechanics. I'm talking about social features, about features like smart invites, about like friend invitations, communication tools like chats, activity feeds, and social graph. And the reason why I think they are so undervalued is that it's hard to measure them. Let's take advertisement as an example. If you are buying advertisement on the Facebook, it's easy. We know how much money we invested. We know how many installs we got at the end. We divide one number by another, we get cost per install. And we can assume that it should be kind of similar with friend invitations. We know how much we paid for the tools. We know how many installs we get. We can calculate the same CPI or cost per install. But is it really like that? In fact, what the data shows that users who came through social channels are much more valuable. They stick around longer, around 5 to 6 times on the day 30. And as a result, you have more time to monetize them. Their lifetime value grows. And what is more interesting, those high-value users bring the same high-value users through the same social channels. So you double on the metrics that you are getting. So you cannot simply compare users who come through advertisements to users who come through social channels. And today I'd like to bring more light on how to measure those users properly and what results to expect. We have only half an hour left, so I'll focus on the friend invitations out of the whole scope of the social features I mentioned. But before we'll get there, let's briefly figure out who the hell am I and why I'm here on the stage in front of you. My name is Vitaliy Zasadnyy, and I started my journey in game industry 7 years ago when I was building 3D MMO games for one of the biggest gaming studios in Ukraine. It was fun time. At that time, Unity was just on the early days, and we faced a lot of issues on our way, particularly issues with integrating third-party services. And 4 years ago, I joined GetSocial, a company who is providing social services for game developers like you, with the goal to build the tools that are super easy to integrate, super easy to use, and actually bring some results to the end users. And I was lucky to work with the biggest brands and help them to integrate social features into their games, with the brands like Rovio, Ubisoft, Sega. And today, I'd like to share you the results of my small research that I did 2 months ago. I analyzed over 88 million of invites sent on our platforms, and I segmented all the apps into 3 categories by the depth of the integration into their game mechanics. And to answer 2 simple questions: how much time in average does it take to integrate friend invitations into their game, and what results you should expect from it. So how do we measure results? How do we measure results of something like friend invitations? First, let's agree on one thing: what is actually friend invitation? If we assume that friend invitation is something that there is entry point, an invitation button somewhere in your UI, then some black magic happens. And as a result of this process, we get app installed on the receiver device. There are 2 things that we are measuring. the amount of invites that we send, and amount of invites that are actually getting installed of the end device, or rather percentage of those devices, the conversion. To make the first metric independent of the daily active users, because like more users we have, more invites we are going to send, we are measuring amount of invites sent per mile or per 1,000 of users. Agree on that? So 2 metrics. First, number of invites sent per 1,000 users. Second, the conversion of how many of those invites actually convert to app installations at the end. Those are the 2 metrics that we are going to use today and operate about. But if you are talking about the industry, there is something called viral coefficient or K-factor that is actually showing how viral is your game. And it's a value from 0 to some unlimited number. If it's around like between 0 and 1, your game is growing organically. If it's over 1, if K-factor is over 1, it means that your game is growing exponentially. It means that more people are coming every day than you have daily users at the current moment. If you'll get to that moment, you can just like sit back, relax, and see how your game is skyrocketing. But before that, we have some work to do. So now we are going to go over 3 levels of integration we can get. And we'll start with just the simplest one with, if you want, we don't have much time and we want to add just an invite button to somewhere in our game. When we'll select a place where we are going to put our invite button, it doesn't take much time. If you assume that you are using some third-party provider and not deciding to implement all the referral infrastructure on your own, which I highly don't recommend doing that, because that's pain in the ass, you just have to figure out where will be the entry point, where you should start calling the referral mechanics in your game. And if you're using, like one of the examples is, for instance, from Dreamwalker. They just place the invite button right on the front page of their game. And if you're doing just that, it's going to take probably like 3 to 4 hours to download the SDK and integrate into your game, and a couple more hours for your quality assurance team to ensure that everything is working properly. There is not much to test. All the tools were already tested, and you have to test only if button actually calls and starts the mutation process from the library. So it's going to take maybe 1 day. The results that you are going to see in average is around 6 invites sent per 1,000 users and conversion of 1.3%, which is kind of disappointing, because if you'll get only 6 invites sent per 1,000 users, you're not going to get far. And at some point we started looking like, so why the numbers are so low? And the most common reason was actually very silly. Imagine you place your buttons like somewhere on the third screen in menu. You get 10,000 users on the first screen, 2,000 users on the second screen. At the last screen where you actually place the button, you get maybe 200 users. Of course, you are not going to get a lot of invites sent if you're going to dig your buttons so deep in the menu hierarchy. So first, take away that I recommend to take out from these presentations: don't hide your button somewhere deep in the menu. Make it easy to find for your users. Like Doomsday Clicker, what they did, they provided not only put the invite button on the front page, they also provided a couple of entry points to start the invite mechanic. They have an invite button on their front screen, but also they were providing invite button or sharing button after each time you destroy the world. Like that's a game about apocalypse and stuff like that. So every time you destroy the world, they ask you, hey, maybe you want to brag among your friends, how did you destroy the world this time? And if you have a match 3 game or any kind of multiplayer game where you have a session, you can offer your users to share the results of your gameplay, for instance. I scored 1,000 points, try to beat my score. Or try to find the entry points where it actually makes sense in your gameplay, in your menu structure, in your game particular. Second part is try to customize content of your invitation. For instance, again, Doomsday Clicker, every time you destroy the wall, they came up with some new creative way. Once that's a tsunami, next time it's an atomic bomb. They were very creative. And each time you destroy the wall, they were providing a custom graphic and a custom message for the invitation to keep it more engaging for the receiver of the invitation. And last thing, when you're sharing invitation, you never know where invitation is going to be shared. It may be shared in the WhatsApp, it may be shared in Facebook, it may be shared in Twitter, in LinkedIn, in email. Every channel is different. Like Twitter has limitation of 280 symbols. Email doesn't have limitation at all, but email provides you a chance to provide like rich, like full HTML page and like rich content of the invitation. So try to customize invite content for each channel separately. Like for WhatsApp, probably it should be more friendly and short. For Twitter, it should be like shorter but for more generic audience. But one more thing that you can customize is the media that you attach. You can provide some default image, like that you use for every message, but again, we face the problem that it's not customized and it's not tailored for the situation. Doomsday Clicker were providing graphics depending on how do you destroy the world. If you have some like, spectacular gameplay, maybe you want to record a part of the gameplay or some highlights of your game, generate a short GIF and attach that GIF to your invitation. Actually, GIFs, when you share them on Twitter or Facebook, they are like very, very engaging, and what we see in our data, they bring much higher conversion. For instance, Doomsday Clicker, after all the optimizations that I mentioned, they managed to bring their conversion from average of 1.3% that I mentioned to 19%. Quite a significant improvement for a like couple of days spent for optimizations. But if you just ask your users to invite other friends, let's face it, why users should care about it? And if you think for a bit, users usually share their opinions or share links to the application, to mobile applications, when either they like your game a lot, or when they hate it and like something went completely wrong. And for those users, you don't really even need to provide some special, like some easy way to share. If they really like or really don't like your game, they'll find a way to tell the world about it. But those are just a tiny fraction of users. Most part of users, they are kind of indifferent to your game, and you have to provide an extra push, an extra incentive of like what they're going to get for bothering their friends with the invitation. And thanks that, we are getting to the next level of integration, or what I call rewarded invites, or referral programs. I believe you all used Grab or Uber. And when just Uber comes to the new market, they like put a huge splash screens, invite your friends, get $20 in the Uber credits. Those kind of referral programs is basically the same friend invitations, but with just some extra incentive to actually send the invitation. And you can do the same with your game. You can motivate your users with providing them some soft currency or some extra bonuses on a daily basis if you have some economy-based game or clicker game or something like that, or provide access to the unique content. If you look into the implementation of the rewarded installs, rewarded invitations from the development perspective, comparing to the just invite process where we have sender of the invite and the receiver, there is one extra important point. Because we're providing some rewards, we need a way to validate those rewards, because people like free stuff. And trust me, there will be frauds, there will be people who will spend like days trying to hack your game to find a way to get those like free coins. So you'll have to implement some kind of validation logic. Most likely you're going to implement it somewhere on the backend because client side is not a safe environment, and that takes extra time. And this extra time results in a bit longer integration time. In average, we saw people integrating in like 2 to 5 days. Like in a week, you can get like entire referral program running with the validations, with the invite process, with the proper onboarding implemented. And one more pattern that we saw from like when people implement referral invites. Before we'll get there, like some examples. Idle Miner, one of the idle clicker game from German developer, they were providing extra 5% of the daily cash for each invited friend. Or Fancy Dogs, from Vietnamese developer Genix Labs, they were providing just a soft currency for each invited friend. And as a result, usually in average you get up to 3 times more invites sent, but what is more interesting, you get 5 times better conversion of the installs. Because when you say in the invitation, hey, you're going to get some reward even before you start playing the game, that kind of motivates people to install it. And I'll tell you like one more funny story. One of our clients, he was in the tutorial to your game, you usually give some free stuff. They were implementing like P2P, like player-to-player battle game, and at the beginning of the tutorial, they were providing you like a hero so you can actually fight. In their invitation message, they said like, install the game and get a superhero at the beginning of the game. They were giving away the hero to everyone, but they also mentioned that in the message, and when they added a mention about like giving away a hero in the message, we saw a spike of like 3 times bigger amount of like conversion improved by 3 times just by changing this invitation message a bit. And one more pattern that we saw that when you just implement rewarded invites, there is initial spike of the invite sent because people want to get this like free coins, free cats, or whatever you are giving away for sending invites. But over the time, the amount of invites sent slowly decreases and stays stable later on. So we were thinking for a bit and like talking to our clients how we can create more spikes like that, how we can push people to like want to send more invites, like more and more, how we can get to the pattern where they get this like initial spike over and over again. And some of our clients got like really creative. For instance, Castle Cats. It's a cat strategy game. You'll probably see a lot of cat games in my presentation. They implemented a weekly quest with the goal of the quest was to invite a friend. And for finishing the quest, they were giving away a unique unicorn cat, and that was the only way to get this cat. So if you want a unicorn cat, you have to invite those friends. They were providing and gating this unique content behind the friend invitations to push people to use this feature more and more. And because they were running this quest on a weekly basis, they were getting like this spike over and over again. Another approach came from Sega and their game Sonic Forces. They were giving away better chests after each invited friend. So for a first friend, you were getting a small chest, then bigger chest, bigger chest, bigger chest, and for the 5th friend, you were getting like super booper big chest. But again, to implement this like spiky behavior, they were setting this counter every week. So every week you get a chance to again open a bigger and bigger chest. And those are just a few mechanics to implement this pattern, but as time flies, we see more and more creative ways of how developers are using it. And if you think for a bit, that was touching quite a lot of game economics, game mechanics, because we are adding some quests, we are adding some variables that actually influence the economy of the game, and that already gets deeper integrated into game mechanics. And what if we'll design our game initially taking into account friend invitations? What if we'll try to make a referral program or invitations as a core part of our game loop? One of my favorite examples is a game from Ubisoft called Face Up. It's a selfie game where the game asks you to make a sad face or angry face or whatever emotion kind of face. You take a selfie, you send to your friend, and the friend has to guess what kind of emotion you try to express. And the way they designed the game, you could send this emotion to guess to your in-game friends, but also you were able to share this emotion to any external friend that is outside of the game through WhatsApp, through Messenger, through Facebook. You were able to take a selfie and send an invitation through any social network possible to get those people from the outside. To design a game like that, probably it's not going to be days. It's going to be weeks, because you have to think about friend invitations on early days of the game design. You have to think about it on the during development cycle. You have to think about it during tuning cycle when you actually adjust your economy. So that's going to be a way longer process, and it can take weeks. But the work pays off. And in average, we saw over 140 invites sent if the invitations are designed as a part of the game loop, as when invitations are the core of your game mechanics. The conversion is a bit lower, because particularly in case of the Ubisoft, they were not providing incentive. You were not getting coins or cash or whatever as a reward. It was just a way to start the multiplayer session, actually connect with your fellow users. But the amount of invites sent was 22 times higher in average than when you just add a button. For Ubisoft, it turned to be a great success to use social mechanics like that. And you can achieve pretty much the same results, but you can get even one step further. Because inviting the friend to the game is only the first part. But it's good to think of how we are going to keep those players in the game, how we are going to re-engage them. And that's exactly the place where social tools can help you again. You can use communication or player-to-player communication through chats to keep them engaged. You can connect your players inside the game. Because if I have friends, if I invested my time to invite friends and bring them to your applications, I have more reasons to get back. If I have a way to talk to my friends inside the game, I don't need to go to Messenger. I don't need to go to Kik, Kakao, or whatever messenger I'm using to talk about how I'm doing inside the game. I can just talk to my friends inside the game, or I can talk to my clan if you have a clan-based game, or you as a developer, you can talk directly to your audience through the game. You don't have to use third-party tools like Discord, where you don't control data at all. You can use your in-game tools to talk to your users. And what is also a good side effect, if I'm posting something on the forum inside the game and somebody replies to my post, I'll get a push notification and I'll be brought back to the game when I click the push notification. So instead of bringing somebody to the Discord or some third-party tools, you're actually bringing people back to your application. And also, social tools provide you a way to re-engage your users. like social notifications through replies on the forums, or when your friends get connected inside the game, are just one of the way. You as a developer, because you have all the social data, you can use this data to send customized push notifications or notifications to your users. You can select a subset of users, for instance, those who didn't send a single invite in period of a couple of weeks, and you can send push notification to them saying like, hey, did you know that you can invite a friend and get like 20 coins as a return? Like, would you like to try that one? User just clicks the push notification and gets directly to the invitation flow. Social tools can help you on every step of the game design and engaging and re-engaging the users in the flow. So that was about the 3 steps, 3 levels of the integration. We can integrate friend invitations just by adding invite button. We can implement rewarded invites, or we can design our game around invitation process. 3 different levels of efforts. But there is one thing common for all 3 steps. We can optimize every single way of integration just by tuning here and there different parts of the invitation process. We can tune, for instance, entry points, like where we are actually placing the buttons. We can tune the rewards that we are providing. We can tune the message that we are sending to the receiver, the reward for the receiver, the onboarding process. There are like a bunch of places where we can tune. And that's kind of a lot of things to experiment with. And if you run experiments like one after another in sequential way, it's going to take probably a couple of days to get good data on each experiment. It's going to take ages to optimize all of that. What we saw from our experience that the biggest reward, the 20-80% rule. The 80% of results are sitting in the 20% of work. We recommend optimizing entry points for the sender and for the receiver, because that's the places where you can get the most amount, like that's the top of the funnel for both sender and the receiver. And that's the places where you can get the biggest advantage in the least amount of time. And to speed up the process even more, we highly encourage to use A/B testing tools. For instance, Unity recently released Unity A/B testing, where you can set up the experiment on the Unity dashboard, provide all the variables for the experiment, set the goals in the analytics on how you're going to determine the winning experiment, run the experiment, and determine the winner, like which configuration, like what kind of message, or which button positioning is actually better for like amount of invites sent or for conversion. And you can configure all that from the dashboard, from the Unity dashboard remotely without redeploying the application to the App Store at the end. Clear on that? Okay. To finish up, just like with drawing characters in 1 minute or 10 seconds, there are like very different results when you integrate social features. You can take an easy way and just drop an invitation button somewhere in your UI and get some mediocre results. You can go one step further and implement rewarded invites and get stable and like constant flow of users coming to your games through rewarded invites. Or you can go nuts and like full swing and design your game like all entirely around invites. Different time you invest into each level of integration, different results you get. You can optimize each and every level of integration, tuning the messages, tuning the rewards. It's all up to you. If you ask how I'd go about my game, I'd probably start with something as simple as just dropping a button, because even if I'm indie developer and I'm one-man army, I'll probably find one day to integrate this basic invitation flow. And then I can see the metrics, see how it's going for my product, see how can I optimize this basic flow, and then probably in the next iteration of my game development, go to the rewarded invites, because I find rewarded invites as a sweet spot between amount of time you invest into implementing invitations and the results that you are going to get. Saying that, thank you for your attention. My name is Vitaliy Zasadnyy. I'm working for GetSocial, and I'm open to your questions. Thank you.